Many of the data manipulation tasks you'll need to perform will link multiple geoprocessing steps together. And if you have to run the same sort of analysis multiple times on different study areas, you might be able to save yourself some time by building a geoprocessing model. Models are essentially a geoprocessing workflow diagram which links tools together and passes the output for one tool into the input for another. Let's turn what we saw with the clip and buffer tools into a model so that we can see how this might save us some time if we need to perform the same analysis on multiple cities. On the Analysis tab for the ribbon, go ahead and click on Model Builder in the Geoprocessing group. That opens a new model view. We can also take a look inside of our project pane and expand the Toolboxes folder, and then inside the default toolbox, we'll see our model there as well. Also notice that when the model view is active, the first tab on the ribbon is now Model Builder instead of Map. If we switch over to the map view, you'll notice that it changes back to map. This is another example of how the interface changes to support the current task. Let's switch back to the model view. Next, we need to start adding tools to our model. On the Insert group of the Model Builder tab of the interface, we can click on the Tools icon to activate the geoprocessing pane. Then we'll switch over to the Toolboxes tab to view all of the available tools. From there, I'll go into the Analysis Tools folder, then into Proximity. That'll show me the buffer tool, where I can click and drag it out and drop it into our model. Now if you accidentally just single click on buffer, that'll start to run the tool. You can go ahead and press this back arrow to get back to the geoprocessing tool list. Now a buffer process has been added to our model diagram. You can click on it and drag it around on the screen to relocate these individual pieces. Go ahead and click off anywhere in this blank area to deselect things, and then click again to activate something else. Then you can click and drag this piece around. I'll go ahead and click here in the blank area to deselect everything. Now we need to supply the input and output parameters for the buffer tool. Double-click on the buffer process, and that'll display a list of the parameters that are required. These are the same parameters that we saw when we ran the tool a couple of movies ago. We need to supply the input features, which in our case are going to be these schools. I'll use the drop-down list and choose Seattle OSM Schools. I'll leave the output feature class the way it is. It's going to go into the default geodatabase. And if I click here, I can scroll to the end and see that it'll be called Seattle_OSM_schools_buffer. For the distance, we'll type in 1/4 mile, 0.25, and I'll change unknown to miles. And then finally, we'll come down to dissolve type, and I'll change this to dissolve all output features into a single feature. I'll press OK, and that'll update our buffer model. When it changes color, that means that the process now has all of the information it needs to run successfully, and we can see the features that go into the model by hovering our mouse over it. One of our input features is the Seattle OSM Schools, and that's represented by this blue circle on the left. If I click on it, I can drag and move it into a new position. I'll go ahead and deselect everything and then click on the buffer, and then click and drag to move it down. I'll go ahead and click on this blue circle and move it above, and I'll make it just a little bit wider by dragging on the right-hand point. Now we can read the full name of the input feature class. I'll do the same thing with the output, which is represented by this green circle. I'll click on it, make it a little bit wider, and then I'll click and drag to move it down. Next, we need to add the clip geoprocessing task to our model. I'll go back into the geoprocessing toolbox, and we'll go into the extract folder, and we'll find clip here at the top, and then I'll click and drag and drop that into our model. If we hover my mouse over it, we'll see a listing of all the parameters that are required. We can double click on the clip tool to open the parameters window, but let me show you another way. Let's go ahead and close this by pressing the X in the upper right-hand corner. We know the input feature is going to be the Seattle Parks, and we can find that in the contents pane of our map. Go ahead and click and drag it right into our model. That'll create a new blue circle that shows an input feature class. I'll go ahead and move it right here. Then I'll click off of it to deselect it, and I'll click and drag to draw an arrow from Seattle Parks and drop it into clip. When I let go, I get a pop-up menu and I get to define what Seattle Parks is. Is it the input features, the clip features, the extent, or a precondition? We'll go ahead and choose input features. Then we can click on the Seattle OSM Schools buffer and drag an arrow down and drop that onto clip as well. This is going to be the clip features, so I'll choose that from the list. Now the clip tool has everything that it needs. It has an input and a clipping feature, and it'll output to this output feature class. At this point, our model has everything we need to run. Let's come up to the Model Builder tab of the interface, and we'll click on the Properties button just to give it a name. We'll go ahead and highlight here where it says Name, and I'll call this Park Buffer, and I'll change the label to read Parks Near Schools. I'll go ahead and say OK to this, and then back on the Model Builder tab, I'll press the Save icon. Then we can close the Model Builder by pressing the X on its tab. If we switch back to the Project pane, going down here to the very bottom and clicking on its tab, we can go up to our toolboxes, and inside the Projects toolbox, we'll see we have a new model called Parks Near Schools. If I want to continue working on it, I'll just right-click on it and choose Edit, and that'll reopen it up in the Model Builder. Let's go ahead and close this tab one more time. If I'm ready to run it, just come over to the project pane and double-click on it. Our model doesn't require any parameters since we've already specified all of the input and output files, as well as the variable for distance as a quarter mile. All we can do is press the Run button at the bottom. After a few moments of processing, we get this message that says it was completed successfully. Now, unlike the regular geoprocessing tools, the results don't automatically get added to the map view, but you can find them stored safely inside of the project's geodatabase. Let's switch over to the Project tab and explore the geodatabase by going into the Databases folder and then expanding the Seattle geodatabase, and we'll see it right here, Seattle Parks Clip. If you want to add it to the map, just click and drag it into the Contents pane. Once the model is built, it only takes one click to buffer the school building polygons and clip the parks layer to the resulting buffer. And that's how you create a basic model in ArcGIS Pro. By linking the geoprocessing tools together and supplying the variables ahead of time, you can save a lot of time running the steps over and over again.